What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the reveal of the next team in our 2020 NFL Power Rankings, a deep dive into the 29th ranked New York Giants. Quick reminder, please do hit that like button down below. It really helps me out. It is the easiest way to support the channel, help it grow, help this video get more views, all that. So please take a second to hit that like down below. So this Giants team is coming off yet another really rough season. Bringing in another new head coach here after firing Pat Shurmur. Dave Gettleman potentially on the hot seat here. Some ups and downs as a general manager, to say the least. I will say I liked a lot of the things he did this offseason. I don't have a lot of negative things to say about Dave Gettleman, which is a new theme on this channel, really outside of the belligerently terrible signing of one of the worst players in the National Football League, Blake Martinez. Other than that, I actually think that Dave Gettleman has done a really nice job here. Now, is it enough to really get them out of the cellar? Obviously, ranking them 29th here is a lot of reasons I don't believe that to be the case. While they've brought in some players that I really like here, they had some really demanding needs at very pivotal positions, things like pass rush, quarterback, offensive line. We'll talk about the things they've done at those positions. If you're new to this series, what we do is we run through the roster, ranking each position group, how they stack up against the rest of the league. While we do that, you're going to be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So while it is a video game, it's a nice copyright-free graphic to use to show you how I perceive each player. So do keep that in mind. And then after that, we'll look at the schedule, go game by game, talk about this team's Vegas over-under and my win total expectations for this team. So without further ado, let's hop into the roster review. Now, before we do talk about the quarterback and the rest of these positions, I do need to make a pretty major note here that something that really drags this team down and leads to them being ranked 29th, which might be a bit of a surprise to some people, is going to be the coach and culture here that is going to rank 31st in the league, and more importantly, 31st for offensive coaching and culture. We've got some major question marks and concerns here, quite frankly. So with the head coach, it's just a question mark. Joe Judge, coming over from New England, 38 years old, a guy with mostly just a special teams background, did coach receivers for a little bit. What kind of role is he going to play here? How good is he at the X's and O's? Or is he going to be more of a CEO type? More of a John Harbaugh? You look at special teams hires in the past like that. They take kind of an overarching culture building CEO type of coach approach as opposed to like a Kyle Shanahan who's really just in charge of that offense. We need to wait and see what Joe Judge, how hands-on he's going to be with the scheme of everything here. But I'm willing to give him a chance. I really am. But one guy that I'm very much not so willing to give a chance is the offensive coordinator hire here, which does give me some question marks about what Joe Judge is thinking, and that is Jason Garrett. I can't think of a much less stale hire than Jason Garrett, who this team watched basically lead a Cowboys team that year after year did not meet expectations with tons of offensive firepower. Jason Garrett did not call the plays. He consistently brought in new offensive coordinators, had other people try different things to get his offense to work, and you're going from a really good offensive coordinator in Shurmur, who, maybe wasn't the best head coach, but a really good offensive mind, to Jason Garrett for a quarterback here that we're going to talk about in just a second that showed a lot of nice things, but has a lot to weed out as well in a sophomore season where we've seen a lot of sophomore slumps from these quarterbacks. This hiring, the culture, just coaching combination here. I don't know how you can get too optimistic about this hire right here in a pivotal year for Daniel Jones and this quarterback room. So let's transition now and go through position by position with the quarterback here, Daniel Jones. All that said about Jason Garrett, I think people are going to be surprised to see me ranking this team actually 24th at quarterback, which is a very respectable ranking. I've said a lot of negative things about Daniel Jones, and I even had a running joke on Twitter by about week 14 last year that was like, this week's Daniel Jones fumble brought to you by ex-NFL defender, because he really, really has some laughable fumbling issues that may be hard to weed out. Now, they brought in better offensive line here, hoping he gets hit a little less from the blind side specifically. Maybe that does help, but that's something that, like Kirk Cousins, I actually did a film breakdown of Daniel Jones pretty early into his career and just kind of acknowledging that he's kind of got the same sort of pocket presence and tendency to fumble from the blindside hits that Kirk Cousins has really struggled to weed out over his career. So you've got that, and then you have the just kind of almost Jameis Winston-esque late throws, late processing, over-aggressive tendencies, leading to too many turnovers. Now, Daniel Jones started 12 games last year, led the NFL in turnovers in that time. You'd be kidding yourself to say that he needs to clean those things up if he's going to be anything other than a Jameis Winston boom or bust. One week he might be a top 15 quarterback, and the next he's bottom 10. That's where I'm looking at Daniel Jones right now, because over history, we don't have very many good examples, if any, of quarterbacks really flipping that script and taking better care of the football. Now, he's still young. This is his sophomore season. But again, that comes back to why Jason Garrett here in a pivotal year for Daniel Jones. So that was a lot of negative to say about Daniel Jones, but I also want to say some positive things here as well, because clearly I rank him 24th. I said that's going to surprise a lot of people. Some Giants fans may or may not like that. This really isn't about me having a second-round grade on him coming out of college. Myself and a lot of people had that second-round grade, but have also admitted that, hey, he was a first-round prospect. Like, he's got a good arm. He's really accurate. Those aggressive tendencies do lead to really nice anticipatory, explosive, vertical plays. That's a lot of stuff that I didn't see here in Daniel Jones. Now, my pro comp for him coming out was Ryan Tannehill. Little did I foresee Ryan Tannehill was going to come out and play like a top 15 quarterback last year. Showed very similar kind of accuracy and aggressiveness downfield. The difference is Tannehill didn't have those same turnover woes that Daniel Jones had here. So if he can weed those out, he could maybe consistently play like that top 15 quarterback or so. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see to find out about that. But for now, I'm ranking him 24th as this sort of weekly boomer bust candidate that I do expect to turn the ball over a lot until proven otherwise. So then behind him, you got Colt McCoy, Cooper Rush stealing Odell Beckham's number, Alex Tanney. This season is already a big question mark with Daniel Jones. If anything happens to him, you might actually start talking about bringing in Trevor Lawrence, because you're going to have the first overall pick depending on when it happens. But the quarterback room, again, to me, a respectable 24th ranking that is going to surprise some people. So now let's talk about the running back room here that is actually going to rank first. Now, we could sit here and get into Christian McCaffrey versus Saquon Barkley all day. To me, they're both exceptional. I'd take Barkley as a true runner, but I think McCaffrey's receiving ability, it's really just a matter of preference. The Giants simply get the nod as the first running back ranking because the depth here is preferable, with Dion Lewis, a good shifty relief pitching back for Saquon Barkley, Wayne Gallman. Definitely also got to keep an eye on Javon Leake coming out of Maryland. Did not see a lot of career touches, showed a lot of speed on tape, ran a really bad 40 time that pushed him out of the draft. But again, that speed was shown on tape, and he was splitting in a committee there that involved Anthony McFarland, a third-round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So maybe some untapped potential there. Definitely going to keep an eye on Javon Leake in that sort of Matt Breida umbrella of undrafted running backs. But that's just why the Giants come in first. I think that Saquon Barkley is going to have an exceptional season this year. Year 3 for him. He is one of those pound for pound top, 5, 10 athletes in the world, whatever you want to say about him. With the ball in his hand, he's just different. So natural at making guys miss, running away from guys. He has more of a power element to him as well. Truly remarkable athlete, which is, 90% of playing running back is just being more athletic than the guy trying to tackle you. But there are a lot of instances that do require running backs to have patience and see holes and lean on more than just athletic ability. Something I don't personally talk about a lot, because it might be once every 3 weeks where you're like, wow, that was a really bad read of a hole by Saquon Barkley. To me, it just doesn't come into effect that often, but when it happens, it is pretty bad. Like, you'll see Saquon Barkley pass up a wide open hole where he could turn it into 8 yards easily and bounce it outside and lose 3. It's a huge issue that Adrian Peterson had, especially early on in his career as well. So I do think that is a part of Saquon Barkley's game that we can acknowledge without tearing the guy down. I mean, he is just a special football player, and I expect to have an incredible season this year. and he obviously makes an impact out of the backfield as well. And his impact as a receiver is going to boost up the receiving grade that let's talk about right now. They're going to rank 9th at receiver. Now, you don't have your true number 1 here, but you have 5 really nice, above average starters here, I would say, which like that counts for a lot. You don't have that one guy that you're looking at in here and being like, wow, he's going to keep defensive coordinators up at night. But 5 players that are really nice and have a nice diversity of skill sets. So like you're on the outside. Darius Slayton was a breakout rookie last year. He is in a way this team's number 1 wide receiver, depending, he's their X. He's going to stay outside. He's their vertical threat. Great release, excellent ability to, set up defenders and turn what looks like a 9 into a slant. Really tough guy to defend. Even if he's a bit of a one-trick pony, more of a straight line guy, he's going to keep defenses honest. And then you look at these sort of short to intermediate targets here. Sterling Shepard, a bit of an outside slot hybrid type of receiver, does a lot of things really well, kind of a jack of all trades, master of none type of receiver. Between him and Golden Tate, you have a lot to keep an eye on. And then you mix in Evan Ingram, who's also going to work over the middle of the field. You have a lot to keep an eye on as far as in routes, out routes, corner routes, slants, screens, crossers. Like, you can get really creative with these guys. Evan Ingram, probably the most athletic tight end in the league, more of a receiver than a tight end, but he is a massive mismatch problem. So is Jason Garrett going to be a guy that can creatively use all these guys and become a massive headache for opponents? I strongly don't think so. I think he's going to have a traditional approach here. You're not going to see the amount of pre-snap motions, play action, creating mismatches, moving pockets, everywhere that the modern NFL is going, that a lot of play callers would just turn this into a terrifying group of receivers. I don't know if the offense is going to be fluid like that and for all these pieces to be utilized like that. But man, if they can get it together, there's few receiving cores in the NFL that you're going to be wanting over the New York Giants. And of course, Saquon Barkley is just that extra added thing in your mind, like, wow, we can't really let him catch the ball on a check down because he's consistently going to make the guy miss that's responsible for bringing him down. So it's pretty impressive, the receiving core that they've been able to put out here after trading away Odell Beckham. So they get a respectable 9th ranking here. Now, the depth behind those 5 is not very good. That's okay. You don't need a lot of depth. They have 5 deep at wide receiver that we just mentioned. But you got Cody Core, who's kind of a 5th, 6th wide receiver, someone you want to contribute on special teams. Corey Coleman is in here. Does he get on the field? If so, he's an interesting, 4th receiver here that can be a bit of a mismatch problem. Speed to be a deep threat. You got David Sills, who's a big body possession receiver. A couple of nice free agent pickups out of Ohio State. Austin Mack, Benjamin Victor. I would expect one of those two does make the roster to round out that 6th wide receiver spot or 7th. They're going to compete with David Sills and Damari Scott. And then behind Evan Ingram at tight end, you sign Levine Toilolo, who is a good blocker, big-bodied, but not anyone of huge note. Caden Smith is a tight end that I liked coming out of Stanford. This team did a really good job to claim him off of waivers from San Francisco, and he actually made an impact late in last season, so I like him as kind of the number 2 guy. Eric Tomlinson, a blocking type, and Garrett Dickerson to round out the tight end depth, kind of a converted fullback type. You do also have Elijah Penny as a fullback, not really worth mentioning. So let's talk about this offensive line that this team, over the last 2 years, has helped this group go from miserable, one of the worst offensive lines in the league, to now a very competent group. So it is going to be a conversation of who starts at left tackle. I personally think that this team is going to look at this like the Raiders when they drafted Colton Miller to play left tackle. They ended up kicking Donald Penn, their long-term left tackle, to right tackle. So I'm anticipating that Thomas will start at left, Solder at right. Either way, those are going to be your starting tackles. which is a really solid duo. I was really high on Andrew Thomas. He was my number one tackle throughout the entire process. I caught a lot of flack for that. His main weakness is he needs to improve his technique within his traditional kick slides on your 5 and 7 step drop passes. But I don't think he got enough credit for his actual athleticism stacked up against guys like Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs. I actually think Andrew Thomas flies off the ball better than those guys, punches guys in the mouth better, is a better run blocker than both of those guys, has extraordinarily good run blocking technique. I think Andrew Thomas is going to be a beast. I loosely compared him to Trent Williams. I really think he was underrated. The Giants clearly felt that way as well. They take him with the 4th pick. And I don't know why you wouldn't start him at left tackle when Nate Solder is a good veteran, but when he loses pretty bad, and it led to a lot of those Daniel Jones turnovers. So I don't think you want to do that again. I would play Andrew Thomas at left tackle where he played real well at Georgia. So there's your tackle duo. Then your guard duo is phenomenal. Again, one of the best guard duos in the league. Kevin Zeitler, an all-pro type of guard, an excellent football player. I loved the trade. Getting him, taking advantage of some stupidity in Cleveland, sending a second-grade starting pass rusher for an all-pro guard. I'm doing that every day of the week. So you got Zeitler, you got Will Hernandez, who was an excellent second-round pick here by Dave Gettleman. The one major weak link here is going to be your center, and that is going to help drag this team down to the 18th ranking, but it's still going to be a very good offensive line. Spencer Pulley, though, at center is just, to me, not an answer. I'm surprised that they didn't go elsewhere because you got such good players everywhere else, and then to roll out a non-starting caliber center next to all these guys, it wouldn't have been my plan. Now, they did draft Shane Lemieux. Maybe he competes at center out of Oregon. But one player that I really, really like here is Matt Peart. I had a 1st to a 2nd round grade on Matt Peart. I wouldn't shut up about him for about 3 months in the pre-draft process. I think he's a baller. I think he's just short of Mekhi Becton as a prospect. They're different players. Peart's much more athletic, quick and long, better technique than Mekhi Becton. But I think a year learning behind Nate Solder, who's a similar type of build, that more longer, lengthier tackle, I think you're going to get 1 year of Solder here at right tackle, and then down the road, if Andrew Thomas and Matt Peart, who together were 2 of my favorite players in this entire class, regardless of position, I really went to battle for both those guys. Ironic that me and Dave Gettleman were on the same page with these guys because I gave Dave Gettleman a ton of crap for how he runs this team over the last few years. But man, I think you could very well be looking at an elite tackle duo, and I don't say that lightly. Thomas and Peart both have some respective development to do, but I am a huge fan. That's probably my favorite thing that this team did in between 2019 and 2020 is getting Andrew Thomas and Matt Peart in here. And I don't know if Peart's going to start right away. I think there's a chance he's better than Nate Solder by the end of the year, but we'll see how that all plays out. So you got a lot of talent on this offense. It's just a matter of what does Daniel Jones look like in year 2? How does Jason Garrett utilize this offense? If you just want to look at the position rankings, if you just gave them an average offensive coordinator, average culture, there's no way this offense wouldn't be a top 20 unit at least. But those question marks regarding how these pieces are going to use, how everything's going to come together under Jason Garrett is what's going to push this offense down to being the 24th ranked offense in the league. But there's a lot of upside here if it can all come together because the players are all there. I love this unit outside of maybe Daniel Jones. So let's transition over to the defense. Now, they're going to rank a little higher for the defensive coaching culture, 27th. I think Joe Judge is kind of coming in, like I said, with a little more of that CEO mentality, that sort of, the overall philosophy here is like, we're going to be big, physical badasses. Like, that's kind of what they're doing. He seems to be bringing over that New England philosophy. They're obviously implementing a multiple schemed defense here. And to me, it seems Joe Judge is taking a little bit more of a hands-on approach with the defense here. And again, we'll see that all play out. But 27th for defensive coaching culture. Obviously, a lot of question marks, but I do like some of that mentality shift that's going on in this organization. And the personnel definitely matches that with Dave Gettleman with sort of this, we're going to have a bunch of run defending nose tackles. We're going to run the ball. This is like 1980 football. We're going to, make teams wish they didn't have to play us. because they're going to feel our presence. Like, that's kind of the philosophy of this team right now. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that's definitely what they're going for, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You know, I ranked them 29th on this side of the ball as a whole, so obviously I'm disagreeing with a lot of the things that they've done here to try and make this a capable defense. So let's start with the run defense. They are going to rank quite high for run defense. They've invested so much into this defensive line. So you have probably the best interior defensive line in the NFL, at least the deepest, most well-rounded run-stopping defensive line. So you've got Dexter Lawrence, Dalvin Tomlinson, true nose tackle types. Leonard Williams, a little more of a hybrid 3-4 tech guy. You know, Lawrence has good athleticism despite being built like a nose tackle. So this team's going to run a lot of base 3-4 hybrid looks. And with Lawrence and Leonard Williams kind of as the 3 techs, Leonard Williams maybe kicking out to even more of like a 4 or head up on the tackles, a 5 technique. It's a good defensive line. You're not going to be able to get through these guys' gaps very often. All 3 of these guys can 2-gap and control their lane really well. So excellent job to make an effort to stop the run in a passing league, New York Giants. You've got a great unit to get that done. Even a guy like Austin Johnson. Now, it's kind of funny. Like, I make fun of this team all the time. Like, why did you draft Dexter Lawrence in the first round? Why did you trade for Leonard Williams? You can sign an Austin Johnson as not an undrafted, as a cheap street free agent. You can draft a BJ Hill here in the 3rd round and defend the run extremely well. You know, if you took Lawrence and Leonard Williams out of here, or Lawrence and Tomlinson out of here, and replaced them with Austin Johnson and BJ Hill, the difference that would make on your season is excruciatingly marginal. And that is why I've shredded this team so much. But hey, hats off to them. They have a great deep defensive line. You got young guys like RJ McIntosh and Chris Slayton, who I think can step up as well if they do need to go to their 6th or 7th interior guy. But as far as the linebackers here, this is why it's not a top 10 run defense, because Kyler Fackrell and Lorenzo Carter kind of slated to be your starting edge outside linebacker sort of hybrid guys here. And I don't even know how much in depth I want to go to Blake Martinez here, because they gave Blake Martinez 3 years, $30 million to actively hurt this team. He is a negative impact on the coverage unit and the run defense. I firmly believe he is not just one of the most overrated players, not just now one of the most overpaid players in the league. I think straight up one of the worst players actively rostered in the NFL, independent of contract and all that stuff. So I'm still speechless that this team gave him the money that they did, but it is what it is. Maybe they'll get lucky and the coaching staff will realize Dave Gettleman's mistake here and just start David Mayo, who they signed on a 3-year, $9 million contract, a significantly better player than Blake Martinez, a better run defender, a better coverage player. Ryan Connolly, a 5th-round pick last year, better than Blake Martinez. Tay Crowder, TJ Brunson, better players than Blake Martinez. If this team's lucky, the coaching staff will bench Martinez ASAP. But as long as he's out there, teams will be able to run from sideline to sideline, basically as Blake Martinez goes out of his way to engage in blockers and become incapable of catching NFL running backs. So, you know, the linebacking group as a whole obviously not going to help this run defense ranking. As far as the front 3 go, though, you're talking about an excellent, you know, gap control group in the front. So let's transition to the pass rush here that is really bad. This is definitely similar to what we said about the Miami Dolphins, a big thing hurting this defense. And I like a lot of things that they've done in the secondary here. We'll talk about that ranking shortly. But if opponents have all day to pass, which they very well may against this team, they very much so did last year, it puts a ton of pressure on that secondary. And while I believe secondary is more important than pass rush, they still have a natural relationship together. So, you know, you have those guys in the front 3 that we talked about. Leonard Williams being the best pass rusher of those 3. He is a capable interior pass rusher. I would, at this moment, quantify him as a number 2 interior guy. He's a good 40-50 pressure a season guy. He's an excellent run defender. You do have to keep an eye on him. So he is going to help. As far as Dexter Lawrence, Dalvin Tomlinson, they're good, strong players. Maybe Lawrence takes a step up. you could do worse than Lawrence and Williams on the interior there, but it's not like you've got Fletcher Cox or Aaron Donald or Chris Jones or Kenny Clark, Cameron Hayward. There's a long list of like actual number one interior rushers. You don't have that here, and you don't really have a starting caliber edge player, in my opinion, at the moment. Now, Lorenzo Carter is starting caliber strictly because of his developmental upside. You want him on the field to see how he can grow. I liked him coming out. I had a first to a second round grade on him, and I think he can become a really good player. Really good athlete, burst and bend off the edge. I wouldn't be surprised if he put together a nice season here, mustered up 8 to 10 sacks, and kind of started to get some traction as this team's number one. But that's very much a question mark. And then next to him, Kyler Fackrell, O'Shane Ximines, not getting a whole lot there. I do like the signings, though, draft picks, rather, of Cam Brown and Carter Coughlin. This was a rare, deep draft class for hybrid edge outside linebackers, and that might be a theme that we start to see more and more of as these college defenses are starting to run a lot of these 3-3-5 defenses where those outside linebackers are, a third edge rusher, a third off-ball linebacker, and a third slot corner. That's really what Cam Brown, Carter Coughlin, that's kind of their skill set, the really nice diversity of skill sets that if this team wants to run that Belichickian 3-4, 4-3 hybrid-looking defense, you've got really nice, flexible pieces there. Kyler Fackrell very much like that as well, a little bit of everything there. So I like the kind of youth and diversity of skill sets here, but obviously you don't have your impact pass rusher here, right? Not just a Khalil Mack, Myles Garrett. You don't even have, say, Preston Smith, D Ford, Frank Clark, that kind of thing. You don't even have that guy that you're like, all right, we kind of got to know where this guy is because he's going to make some noise. This team really is just a bunch of moving pieces from the pass rush. And then that linebacker rank, it is going to list at 30th here, but that is tied for dead last. I actually think David Mayo and Ryan Connolly are the two best linebackers on this roster. Blake Martinez, though, as long as he is starting here, which given that contract, it's going to be hard for this coaching staff to bench him, he is going to actively hurt your team while he's on the field. He is this big black hole for offensive coordinators to say, we are going to target that man right there. Fast tight end's going to run right past him. We can run outside zones. He can't catch up. He's not aggressive. He's not going to plug holes and stop the run in between the trenches. So if this team's lucky, Ryan Connolly will come back healthy and this coaching staff will wake up and be like, we can't do what Green Bay did for the last 4 years and let this guy actively hurt our defense. Maybe even TJ Brunson, Tay Crowder, a pair of 7th round picks at linebacker. I actually think David Mayo is a quality number 2 linebacker here. Probably the only reason this team isn't ranking alone dead last. I can get behind the contract they gave him. But yeah, man, we've talked about it enough. This linebacking group is going to be a liability for this team. But fortunately, this defensive backfield is pretty nice. It's young. It's extremely young. There's not a ton of experience in this secondary. But at the corner room, you bring in James Bradberry, a massive contract. Probably not a contract I would have given myself, but I understand why they did it. To me, Bradberry's always been a really high-end number 2, a quality starting player that I just never would have been comfortable having him take up the cap space that he did, but I get why they felt the need to do it. And then you have DeAndre Baker, who really had a rough rookie year. I liked him coming out of Georgia. He is that aggressive, kind of instinctive corner that isn't an elite athlete, so he does kind of have to be perfect mentally or close to perfect mentally, kind of like a Marcus Peters in a way where you will see him get, I don't want to say abused, but give up big chunk plays because he is a little over aggressive and can't make up for it with his athleticism. You're hoping that, I don't want to say he gets more lucky next year, but you're hoping that aggressive, high football IQ comes out a little more next year in year 2 in the NFL, and you can see him solidify himself as a nice quality starting corner. I think he can do that. I think that's fair, but there are question marks there. He really did not play well as a rookie, but neither do a lot of young corners, so I'm not going to hold that against him. And then the slot corner position is really interesting. So it's probably going to be Grant Haley as the true number 3 corner here. I love Grant Haley. I could not believe he was undrafted in his class just because he's 5'9". I mean, his movement skills are phenomenal. He's physical, instinctive. I think there's a chance he breaks out as one of the best slot corners in the entire NFL this year. I'm a big believer in Grant Haley. But if he does slip, Julian Love is sitting here as a free safety, slot corner, strong safety, do-it-all, defensive back hybrid here. I think in a pinch, he could easily flip back down and become a slot corner. You have Sam Beal, who this team spent a third-round supplemental draft pick on. He's very much, prove it to us. Show us something, Sam Beal, because he's done nothing to this point. Corey Ballentine, a 6th-round pick last year, good athlete. I love the Darnay Holmes pick as well. I should have said his name sooner because, like I said, I like Grant Haley, but this player is almost too good for them to pass up in the 4th round. Even if Julian Love could play slot corner, Darnay Holmes is going to come in and compete for that spot right away. I love Darnay Holmes. Now, it's unfortunate that Haley and Holmes, it'd be pretty tough for these guys to coexist. Most NFL teams are pretty stubborn about not playing 2 really short, undersized corners because then you can really get out physical, especially this team that's going to want to play physical. But I really like Haley and Holmes, just fluid movement skills, scrappy, smart, athletic players that deserve a spot starting in the NFL. And then they draft Chris Williamson, kind of a dart throw corner in the 7th round. So it's a really nice looking corner room. A lot of youth outside of James Bradbury. I think I'm giving this secondary its respect, ranking at 20th. Let's talk about the secondary, the safeties as well here. So I do project Julian Love right now to start at free safety, where he was phenomenal in the last quarter of last season. Really showed those playmaking instincts just like he did at Notre Dame, where he played outside corner, transitioning to a free safety spot here. We've seen a lot of safeties have success doing that. Guys like LaMarcus Joyner, Jimmy Ward, both come to mind. I think that Julian Love very well could be the next player like that who's just going to be a really nice, rangy, instinctive playmaker as the free safety here. But they do draft Xavier McKinney in the 2nd round. Now, I see Love, McKinney, and Peppers getting a ton of playing time here because Peppers is a bit of a linebacker, box safety hybrid. We've seen enough of him in the NFL now to know that he's not a free safety. He's struggled when teams play him high. But if he's hovering within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, kind of following tight ends around, playing more buzz coverages, just kind of being a nuisance, kind of playing like a Tyrann Mathieu type, Landon Collins, kind of the same idea here in New York, that's where he really thrives. So I'm picturing Julian Love up top as the center fielder. Jabril Peppers really focusing on the box. And then Xavier McKinney being that kind of dime linebacker here. A dime safety here that isn't technically going to be a starter, but is going to be on the field a ton. 3rd downs, he's going to be all over the place. He's going to be playing some too high with Julian Love. He's got some decent range. Not elite range, though. That was something I had on a scouting report, is I don't see him as a true free safety, a guy that can really patrol sideline to sideline, but he's got great instincts as far as breaking on balls, getting that extra step early, reading the eyes of the quarterback. As a too high cover safety and dime looks, I think he's going to be great there, but he can also man up tight ends. He's just a really good, versatile defensive back. So the safety group here, I love. I actually really like the corner group as well, but you've got guys like DeAndre Baker that needs to really settle in. This team, you don't feel super confident in that number 2 corner, at least, September 13th or whenever the season kicks off. Really good, deep group of secondary. What Dave Gettleman has done with this group and improving the offensive line, I'm kind of done roasting him. The Blake Martinez thing was funny, but it's really not a laughing matter. I mean, secondary and offensive line are so important, and Gettleman has done it the right way, where he's like, we're going to take good players at meaningful positions and let these guys battle it out. So I like a lot of the things that this team's doing. I just think they're probably a year away. They have a lot to show us as far as how is Joe Judge going to implement this multiple defense? How involved is he going to be? How good of a coordinator is Patrick Graham going to be? What the hell is Jason Garrett going to do here? Can he change our minds as far as being an actual creative offensive coordinator here? Or is this team going to be so old-fashioned and so old school where they're just going to run the ball, run traditional passing plays, focus too much on run defense, not enough on their coverage? It's just a lot to prove here, and I think that's perfectly reasonable, despite them doing a lot of nice things over the last 100 days or so. So let's run through this team's schedule too quick. Not going to be a huge surprise. I've got them going 4-12. It's not a particularly easy schedule. I do actually have them taking the win in the home opener against Pittsburgh. I think they match up pretty well with that physical mindset, but really tough run of games there. 3 out of 4 on the road. Your one home game is San Francisco. So I haven't fallen to 1-4, splitting with Washington, losing against some tough opponents there. You got to go to Philadelphia. Tom Brady's coming to town. Philly again. At Cincinnati, definitely a winnable game, but then you got to go to Russell Wilson. You got Arizona coming to town. Definitely not an easy game, but definitely winnable. I did give them that win. And beating Cleveland at home as well. Not going to be an easy win, but something I think they can do. At Baltimore, at versus Dallas to round this thing out. So 4-12. Under 6 wins is their 6 wins is their Vegas over-under. I like this bet a lot. It's a tough schedule. I don't personally think that between Daniel Jones and Jason Garrett, which can say all the nice things about the nice things that they've done with this roster, but Jason Garrett and Daniel Jones are the guys that are going to control the majority of how this season plays out. And I'm not putting my money on those guys until they prove me otherwise. So that's your deep dive into the New York Giants. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned a thing or two. I hope you're enjoying the deep dive series. If you are, I do ask you take a second to hit that like button down below. It really helps me out. Also drop a comment. Who do you think should come next? Cheers as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace out.